Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 27th of August, 2021. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, the Ethereum Name Service, or ENS, announced today that they have now added full DNS namespace integration to ENS, and it's now live on mainnet, and this has been a very, very long time coming. So, I guess to put this into plain English, what this means is that you can now use the DNS system, whether that be like example.com or like example.io, as part of the ENS system. So, you can see here in this little screenshot on the in the blog post here, Brantley Milligan, who's one of the developers at ENS, he basically has brantley.milligan.com and his Ethereum address is attached to it. So, there could be like brantley.milligan.eth, which is a different address to brantley.milligan.com. But what's really cool about this is that everyone who already owns one of these kind of like .com or .io kind of DNS names or kind of, I guess, like URLs, can now set their Ethereum address, their Bitcoin address, Doge address, whatever, to kind of like, brantley.milligan.com or whatever .com that they have, which I think is really, or whatever DNS they have really, which is absolutely awesome. Now, as I said, this has been a long time coming, and it's funny because I saw a little bit of drama about this. People basically said, well, this just rugged everyone that was like domain squatting. You know how people kind of sat on domain names like, I was talking about beer.eth the other day, where someone was obviously sitting on that, and then Budweiser bought that. Well, whoever owns beer.com now, they don't have to buy beer.eth, right? They can just use beer.com and tie their Ethereum address to that. But on top of that, like it's just basically all the other kind of like popular domain names out there, like google.com. Google can have their official Ethereum address tied to google.com. It doesn't have to be google.eth, like reddit.com. You can go down the list basically. And I think I think the people that were complaining, this, as I said, this has been in kind of like the plan for a very long time. It was actually on the front page of the ENS website as well. So anyone who was kind of like domain squatting was doing so either not aware of this because they just didn't kind of like do their research or check up on this, or people just love to complain right at the end of the day. So yeah, that's just a little bit of drama that I saw about it, but generally I think this is an absolutely amazing feature, obviously, because if you already have a domain name and you can't get the .eth for it, or someone's squatting on it, or it's like super, super expensive, well, what ends up happening is that you just have to go with something else, and it gets kind of annoying, right? You have to go with like, if you were Google, you'd have to go with a completely different thing to google.eth, something else, and it wouldn't really work like that. But now you can just go with google.com and set your Ethereum address or Bitcoin address or Doge or anything else really as that. So yeah, just really, really excited to see this. There's a bit more details about this in the blog post here. I'll link that in the YouTube description. And there's also a step-by-step guide of how to import your DNS domain to ENS to be able to kind of do this. Mine's going to remain sassel.eth. I actually don't know if I own sassel.com. I think I might have registered it at one point, but I have to check up on that because I haven't used kind of like the old DNS system in a while. But yeah, definitely I prefer .eth, right? Because it feels more natural, feels more native. But I think this is just like a really great way to stop kind of that squatting that's going on, and to allow people who already own the DNS, not to have to kind of like spend lots and lots of money to buy the .eth domain from these squatters. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. And just in general, it kind of like extends the use case of ENS to basically the entire web as well. So yeah, really, really great to see that. All right, the second biggest piece of news comes from Transmissions. He works at, I think it's a he, works at Rari Capital, basically revealing what he calls Nova. Now, what Nova is basically a way for L1 and L2 to communicate. Now, he describes it in this thread. Basically, he says, for the last couple of months, he's been tinkering with a design for trustlessly relaying arbitrary contract calls between L2 and L1, and that's called Nova. So essentially, with Nova, you can make trades on L1 Uniswap, ape into L1 NFTs, and use L1 Aave, all from L2. So essentially, the way this would work is that this is kind of like similar to what Starkware has done with their DAMM. Their kind of DAM that I talked about a few weeks ago, where basically you can send these kind of like messages, I guess you could call them, to layer 1 from layer 2, and then there's relays that sit in the middle trustlessly that kind of like relay those messages for you, and they process it all in L1, and then it comes back to you at L2, and you can kind of like pay the gas fees from there. So, and the really cool thing about this is that this works on optimistic rollups as well as ZK rollups. So this is just another way we're kind of getting around that 7-day kind of withdrawal period for optimistic rollups, right? And I've been talking about bridges a lot recently, and obviously with Starkware I talked about the DAMM, but I think the next biggest thing outside of the bridges is this sort of stuff, right? This trustless kind of communication between L1 and L2 done through these relayers who, when constructed correctly, can't actually steal any funds and can't actually do anything, do any funny business. They're literally just relayers, and if they don't relay the messages, then they don't go through, and the whole transaction kind of like fails and reverts or whatever. It's kind of like a flash loan, where if you don't actually pay back the money after you've taken the loan and done all your business within kind of like that one Ethereum block, then the whole kind of thing reverts. So that's my understanding of how this would work, is that if the relay isn't done, well, any messages that you sent from L2 to L1 weren't processed to begin with, and nothing really happens on that end. The whole kind of like thing reverts from there. Now, the thread here from Transmissions goes into much more detail about what this is, kind of like a link to GitHub and stuff like that. So you can go read that. It'll be linked in the YouTube description. But yeah, I mean, as we've been talking about bridges a lot lately and kind of like layer 2s in general, this is the critical infrastructure that needs to be put in place to enable this seamless liquidity movement between all of these different layers. Because, right now there's kind of like two schools of thought about how to scale blockchains that I see in the wild. There's the Ethereum school of thought, which is like a roll-up centric roadmap. We basically have ZK roll-ups, optimistic roll-ups, all that kind of stuff as a way to scale Ethereum at L2, with L1 just providing the security for that, right? And that is still the same kind of thing with sharding, where sharding just gives us more kind of, I guess, fuel for L2. It gives us more space, gives us more room to kind of do, more activities. Then there's kind of, I guess, like you would call it the Solana school of thought, which is basically scaling everything on layer 1 without sharding. So essentially just one chain for everything to kind of like be on there, and which I mean, I've talked about this before on, I think, the AMA, but I don't think that's like a long-term sustainable solution, because in order to do that, you need to keep increasing hardware requirements over time, right? You need to kind of keep beefing things up, and essentially you're trying to run, like, I guess you're trying to run every single thing. Like, think about it, like absolutely everything in a scalable way while keeping fees cheap on just like one kind of like blockchain, which I don't think, I mean, obviously these people are quite smart that are working on it, but I don't think that, well, for one, I don't think it's a decentralized way to do it, because you need beefy hardware to run it, and everyday people can't exactly run a full node to verify these things. It becomes very, very hard to, because there's so much data on layer 1, and I don't think that the validator set can be decentralized because of that as well. And it's also like a depos system, which turns into a cartel over time. But not to like kind of bash that too much, but I just wanted to kind of describe the two schools of thought here, which is the layered approach to scaling, which is what Ethereum's going with its roll-up centric roadmap, and then there's the kind of like, I mean, and sharding. I mean, it's a layer slash kind of like sharding approach, where I guess you could think of layers as like scaling up. So like a building, right? You have a building, it has one floor. If you scale up with layers, like layer 2, you're adding more floors, essentially. It's a crude analogy, but I think it works. And then you have horizontal scaling, which is sharding, where essentially you can have like another building across the street, right? And then on that building, you can have more stories to it than just one, which are more L2s. Do you see kind of where I'm going with this? And then you have like a road between them, which is like the bridge infrastructure on Ethereum. So there's that kind of thinking. And that allows us to keep layer 1 as decentralized and as kind of like as secure as possible, and allows everyday people to verify the integrity of layer 1, and then layer 2 can inherit that security. Whereas the other school of thought is, let's just scale everything at layer 1 without sharding on just one holistic thing. And the logic flows is that they're doing this because of breaking, because they think that the layered approach breaks composability, and that composability being things like, as I described, flash loans, right, where you can talk to a bunch of different protocols to do something synchronously in one kind of Ethereum block. But I don't think that's true, or is going to be true over the longer term, because we're going to have solutions like Nova. We're going to have these bridges. We're going to have the DAMM from Starkware and other such things like that. And I just think it's going to be a very seamless experience. I think a lot of the layer 2 stuff's going to fall into the background for users. They're not even going to have to worry about any of this stuff. They're just going to use front ends to kind of, I guess, interact with it. They're going to use bridges, Hop or Connext or whatever. They're going to use Optimism, Arbitrary, whatever L2 it is. They're not even going to know at the end of the day. They're just going to know what apps they're using. They could be using Uniswap on some kind of like roll up that they never heard of before, without even knowing it, and they could be bridging assets across all of this sort of stuff. It's all about branding at the front end, right? And there's going to be different brands that kind of, I guess, win, and different kind of front ends that just tap into these things, like even the wallets and stuff like that. But this is why I think that Ethereum's kind of like layered approach is just the best way to scale a blockchain, and to keep it as decentralized and secure as possible. But also, I just don't think there's any other way to do it, because of the fact that you run into centralization issues, because you need beefy hardware at the end of the day. You can either solve it with kind of like software, which, I mean, you also kind of require some kind of like beefy hardware, or not, I mean, beefier than layer 1 to kind of like process layer 2 transactions, but it's a different thing because you're not relying on that hardware for security for the layer 2. Layer 2 is relying on the layer 1 for security. So yeah, I think it just keeps it much more decentralized over time, and I think that the composability issues are going to be figured out, and I think generally it's just going to be asynchronous anyway, and it's going to be quick. It's not going to be, I'm going to show you in a sec what I mean by quick transfers between chains, but it's going to be asynchronous, where essentially you kind of do what Nova is doing here, where you kind of like relay messages across. It doesn't all happen within one Ethereum block or whatever within 15 seconds, but it still happens because you send the message gets received on one end, then that message is replied to, and that message reply gets kind of like acknowledged by the original sender, and kind of like then it goes from there, and then you kind of complete that transaction, so to speak. This is exactly how the World Wide Web works today. This is exactly how the web scaled, and I do believe this is exactly how Ethereum and kind of with its layered approach is going to scale long term, and is going to be the preferred solution. So yeah, I didn't mean to go into kind of like a deep breakdown into like how the scaling approach is going to go, but I think it's good always to give a refresher there, especially when talking about these sorts of things like Nova. And speaking of L2, so L2beat.com got a major upgrade or major update today. They've added a new risk view, new research, and more. You can see here their risk view, and this is a condensed version of it, shows a bunch of different properties of these L2s, such as state validation. So how is the state of the L2 being validated? Is it fraud proofs, or is it zero knowledge proofs, so ZK proofs, whether it's an optimistic system or a fraud-based system? If it's plasma, what are the exits like? And then it goes into the data availability. So is it on-chain data availability, or is it external as part of a data availability committee, which I've talked about before in the context of I think Validity or Validium, one of the two there from Starkware. Are the contracts upgradable? A lot of them are, yes, because they're very early stage. So if they are upgradable, what ends up happening is that if there's no time lock on it, it's a security risk, because if the contract can be upgraded, it can be upgraded to do anything, right? It can be changed to do anything underneath you. It's not immutable, and there's no time lock on it, so you don't have any kind of like, I guess, path to recovery there. But then there's also the operator censoring a part of it. So is the layer 2 operator censoring your transactions or censoring you from being able to do anything on L2? If so, you can force exit or exit to L1. And this is the magic of L2, where when constructed correctly, your funds cannot be held hostage on the L2. They can't be stolen or anything like that. What can end up happening? What can end up happening is the operator can censor you because they control like the sequencer or the block producer, and then you can just force exit to layer 1, and your funds from the bridge will be unlocked after a certain period of time. In optimistic rollups, it's a week. On ZK rollups, it depends on what the construction is. It depends how often the proofs have been relayed to the chain and stuff like that. And then you can see operator down. Like, do they have like an escape hatch, which basically means can you exit your funds from that bridge as well? So I think this is really, really good. I mean, L2beat is doing an amazing amount of work here, basically pulling all these data together and making it like free for everyone to view, because I think this is very, very important going forward. I think a lot of this is going to change over time. Obviously, there's going to be time locks added where they need to be for for contract upgradability. There's going to be different kind of like state validation things put in place and all that sort of stuff. And to kind of complement this, they've also got descriptions in each, a risk summary in each kind of like project's page here, and they've also got a bunch of links to research and things like that as well. So check out this thread; it'll be linked in the YouTube description. And L2beat is quickly becoming, L2beat.com is quickly becoming one of my favorite websites in the ecosystem to check daily, just to kind of see the growth of L2, but also get a lot of context around what's happening with all the different L2s that are live today. So again, speaking of L2, Optimism has announced that custom token bridging is now supported on an optimistic Ethereum gateway near you. So just opening up the blog post here because they've got a TLDR in here. So TLDR Basically, they released a new gateway interface which enables arbitrary token deposits and withdrawals to Optimistic Ethereum. In the previous major release of the gateway, they allowed tokens listed in the Optimism token list to be transferred to L2 and back. But with this new release, the gates have been opened and allow any ERC20 token to transition the boundary between the layers. So essentially, you can send any token, any ERC20 token you want to Optimism, and you can withdraw it back to L1, as you see fit there. Which is, awesome, right? Like the more kind of like openness we get from Optimism and Aribitrum and stuff like that, the better, because they do have obviously whitelist and guardrails in place. But I did say that these guardrails would come down over time as the kind of, I guess, system is live for longer, gets more battle tested. As I mentioned the other day, Optimism increased their kind of like capacity on layer 2 as well. I think they doubled it to 100,000 transactions per day, and Optimism has now done 1 million total transactions, which is really cool. And I checked out their revenue; they're actually doing $100,000 of daily trading fee volume as well. So in aggregate, they're doing a lot of fee volume, even though the fees are like sub $1 and will get cheaper over time as kind of like more and more transactions per second are enabled there, and the proofs kind of get cheaper to, the revenue goes up collectively in aggregate, but it falls down for individual users. But yeah, great to see they're just kind of like taking, I guess, the guardrails off of this and allowed for arbitrary token bridging to Optimism, which should allow for much more pairs on Uniswap on Optimism to be created and much more trading volume to happen there, which I am really looking forward to seeing. All right, speaking of bridges, litocoin here, whoops, I gotta get rid of that sound there. Litocoin here basically showed a video of going from Polygon to Optimism in 2 minutes with only a 10-cent transaction cost. And new users won't even need to ever touch Ethereum mainnet anymore. Now, I saw some comments in kind of like the reply to his tweet here, which basically said, oh, well, the Ethereum L1 is so limited that the users don't even have to, can't even touch it anymore. It's like, that's the point, guys. Like, Polygon commits its state to Ethereum every few hours, right? Like as part of its construction, and Optimism commits itself. Optimism relies on Ethereum for security and commits kind of like those batches to L1 as well. So the kind of long-term goal here with these sorts of things, with L2s and stuff like that, is to just have them paying for Ethereum kind of like transaction, for block space, and all the users to sit on L2. And as I've described L2 before as like a user wrapper, we can have like millions, if not billions, of users in these L2s, and then those L2s act as like a one entity that posts proofs to the main chain, which pay those fees that go to, I guess, like a burning under 1559, and some of them go to the miners and stakers and stuff like that. So the Ethereum mainnet is still very much being used to secure this whole ecosystem, and is still very much being paid for, and ETH is still very much being burned. But the beautiful thing is that the end user doesn't have to touch it. The end user can go using Hop here. They can go from Polygon to Optimism in 2 minutes with a 10-cent transaction cost, and it's absolutely seamless, right? Like, this is just amazing. I mean, people were talking about, 7-day withdrawal periods, all this sort of stuff, and delays here and there, and, loss of composability, all that, blah, blah, blah. I was talking about that just before, but really these solutions are here. They're getting better every single day. I mean, there's a new update from one of these bridges like all the time. I mean, Hop isn't the only one. I've got Connext up here too, where they've got something that they call X-Pollinate V2, which is Arbitrum to Polygon testnets in 70 seconds. Like, this is crazy, right? This kind of transfer time is going to come down over time as well. I think there is a theoretical limit on how quickly you can do it, because of I guess block times and things like that, and definitely depending on the risk curve as well. You got to consider that too. But yeah, Arbitrum to Polygon testnets in 70 seconds. This is going to be live on mainnet soon. I mean, the bridges are here, guys. Like, they work. You can go try them out today. I mean, you can try this Hop protocol out one right now. You just go to their website, click on this sort of stuff, bridge some funds across, go try it. It's a very seamless and awesome experience. And, this is really the future. And I'm really, really excited that we have all this stuff live, and it's not just kind of like, it's coming soon anymore, right? And I mean, Arbitrum's going live this month still. I'm going to assume they're going to go live on Tuesday, which is the 31st of August, just because we're at the 27th of August right now. But, they're going live like very, very soon. And you're going to be able to do this on mainnet. Go from Arbitrum to Polygon in 70 seconds on mainnet. Just like on Hop, you can go from Polygon to Optimism in 2 minutes here. Obviously Optimism is an optimistic rollup as well. So yeah, this stuff's here. It's coming. It's being improved every day. Super, super exciting. All right, so Blocknative put together a really, really great kind of EIP 1559 piece today titled How to Calculate Ethereum EIP 1559 Max Fees, and it's basically a guide on how to do this. Now, the funny thing is this is not something that most users will have to kind of like worry about or deal with or whatever. But if you're really interested in getting into how things like the base fee, the priority fee, the max fee, the max priority fee, all that sort of stuff works, then this blog post will give you a very comprehensive view on it and kind of like illustrate this in easy to explain, easy to understand ways as well. I mean, honestly, I read through this and I was like, wow, okay, this is awesome. Like if you really want to know how it all works under the hood and how you can kind of like guarantee yourself to get into like the next block, then this is definitely something that you should check. But also, if you don't want to read this blog post every time to kind of calculate these sorts of things, I mean, Blocknative has already done this for you by creating this tool called the gas estimator tool, where you can basically see you have 99% probability in getting into the next block if your max fee is set to 142 with a priority fee of 4, and then you can see what the base fee is here and stuff like that. And then you can, go down the list here and see what your probability is depending on kind of what max fee and priority fee you set and stuff like that. So, and then you can do a trigger here and see just normal transactions versus 1559 style transactions, or should I say legacy transactions. But still, go read this blog post if you're interested in kind of like, I guess, understanding how it all works under the hood. But at the same time, the funny thing is about this is that I think, as I said, long term, all the users are going to be on layer 2, and the only kind of like people that will have to worry about this sort of stuff is going to be L2 operators, and it's going to become such a finely tuned machine that if not all of the transaction space on L1 is taken up by these L2s, then it's basically going to be a very, very efficient kind of block space market where all the L2s will know in advance when they're going to post their proofs. They know which other proofs are going to be posted. They can probably coordinate with each other to say, okay, I'm going to post my proof here. You can post yours after me, sort of thing, or like kind of like batch this stuff together. I mean, there's so much that can be done there, and I think long term it's going to be wild to see just how efficient the L1 block space becomes when we do have the majority, if not all, of the block space being taken up by these L2s. And then in sharding, it goes even further than that. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. But for now, and probably for the foreseeable future, at least for the next maybe 2-3 years, it's good to kind of like have access to tools like this for us end users so that we can kind of like have better predictability about this sort of stuff. But again, if the wallet that you're using is designed correctly, it should already do this for you, and you should already have like a very, very high chance of getting into the next block anyway, with kind of like the default that the wallet gives you. But this is just a good way to make sure if you want to like ape into a new NFT project or something like that, this is definitely an edge, and this will definitely help you with doing that. So speaking of 1559, bantg kind of posted a tweet today where he compared the adoption rate of two major transaction type upgrades. One of them being SegWit, which went live on the 25th of August 2017, and is currently used for about 80% of Bitcoin transactions. Whereas 1559 went live on the 5th of August 2021, which is only about 22 days ago now, and has already seen 55% adoption. So SegWit took 2 years to get to those levels. So it just shows like how kind of like much faster the adoption has been of 1559 style transactions over SegWit. And I think this comparison actually holds a lot of water because SegWit was meant to be an end user upgrade where it would offer kind of like cheaper fees for end users because it increased like the kind of block weight, not the blocks, like the hard block size, but like the block weight. Kind of like how 1559, I guess, isn't meant to kind of like lead to cheaper fees or whatever, but it kind of like increases the gas limit to 30 million, but it targets 15 million. So I'm not sure if like they're totally comparable, but there is some similarities there. But this just shows like how fast the Ethereum ecosystem is to adopt these sorts of things. I mean, I mentioned in my newsletter yesterday, I expect it to get to like 70-80% of adoption and maybe taper out there for a little bit, but it might just be slower to get to 90%. I'm not sure if we'll ever reach 100%. Maybe we will. It relies on like pretty much every single actor on the network, kind of like updating themselves to use 1559 style transactions instead of legacy ones. So we'll see how that goes there. But yeah, still really great little chart here from bantg. So Parsec have updated their tool here. I think this is live now. I haven't checked it myself, but they've basically added this thing called the NFT Firehose, which basically allows you to do something called tape reading, which is essentially see like a live view of kind of like NFT bids going through over a certain threshold, or NFT trades going through over a certain threshold. So as you can see here, this is showing that every NFT traded on the Ethereum network that's worth more than 0.1 ETH. And you can see like different projects here like Stoner Cats and kind of like Bastard Gang Punks and stuff like that. And I mean, Subducks, a few other ones that I kind of like recognize here. But this is really cool because I think this is a good way to probably get insight into what NFT project is kind of hot. Like if you suddenly see a lot of things coming through, then you can kind of spot that early on. Maybe go, maybe that's some alpha for you to go and buy this NFT and kind of like see that there. But they also added an all-in-one collection level data with NFT preset layouts here. So basically, you can see here. I mean, for those who don't know, Parsec's like a Bloomberg terminal for like Ethereum essentially. But you can see on the screenshot here that the different NFT prices between a Bastard Gang Punks here, and then you can see on the right side the NFT trades, and then down the bottom, I think my camera's kind of like blocking this, but you can see like holders and stuff like that. So this really gives you like a bird's eye view of what's happening in certain parts of like the Ethereum on-chain ecosystem, which I think is really, really cool. But yeah, I think this is live in the Parsec tool today. You can go check them out. That's app.parsec.finance. I think it's a paid service, I believe. But yeah, I'm not sure what the prices are right now. I had access a little while ago. I haven't checked it in a little while, but yeah, this is really, really cool to see. So we had a burn record over the last 24 hours. I think this was actually a while ago now. This was almost 24 hours ago where we burned 9,000 ETH in 24 hours yesterday, which is Ultramark 7.7 here. If you guys are familiar with Justin Drake's kind of like terminology here, but this is crazy. I think we actually broke this record over the last 24 hours because if I look at my little kind of like iPad mini here, it seems that we've almost broken that record or come close to breaking it, which is crazy. I mean, this is basically all the NFT mania going on right now. It's just pushing us to burn a lot of ETH. I mean, we're already at almost 110,000 ETH burned, and we're at 100,000 yesterday. It's just crazy, right? And I went through yesterday about kind of like the price impacts and what I expect going forward with this sort of stuff. I'm not going to rehash myself today, but yeah, just crazy to see this burn record. And I think that we're going to see a day with over 10,000 ETH burned in 24 hours. That's not too far away, I don't think. And we're going to see maybe even more than that because if we went back into like we were with, I guess, like May in terms of price action on ETH and other kind of like coins out there, coupled with an NFT mania, you would have both DeFi and NFT mania going on at once, which would lead to probably sustained like maybe a couple hundred plus Gwei prices, or gas prices, I should say, which would be quite crazy. And that would literally burn like 20,000 ETH a day or something like that. Something insane, which is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on that and keep you guys updated on that for sure. And the last thing I wanted to shout out here was that Foundation now has a newsletter. So Kit, the Director of Collector Relations at Foundation, is going to be curating this. And you can go to foundation.app/newsletters to kind of subscribe here. It's really great. I mean, I've been spending a lot more time in the kind of like one-on-one art space at the moment, especially on Foundation. I bought 3 pieces so far. And it's just really, really cool to kind of like see what they're doing over there. And not just them. I mean, there's obviously other platforms like Super Rare and stuff like that. But I'm really partial to Foundation because I'm good friends with Kit here. She watches The Refuel. Shout out if you're watching the episode, Kit. And I bought one of her pieces actually a little while ago as well. So yeah, but generally I really like Foundation's outlay as well, how they kind of like outlay on the website and have all the artists there and all the pieces and everything like that. So I've become a bit of a collector on there these days and slowly but surely building up my collection. But yeah, if you want to keep up to date with what they're doing, definitely go subscribe to their newsletter here. But I think that's it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give that video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next week. Thanks everyone.